So I've been driving past this barn on the outskirts of town for 2 decades, and every time I drive by, I notice there was an older white car parked inside, but I was never really interested in it because it was just a mid-70s white car, and I wasn't too interested in the 70s cars back then. Well, recently I've been looking for another project, so I decided to pull in to take a look at what I thought was an Oldsmobile. Turns out that it's going to be a 1974 Grand Am. That'd be a Pontiac Grand Am. I don't know much about Pontiacs, so I did a little bit of research, and it's a 74. It was a cross between a Grand Prix and a Trans Am, so it's got some performance parts on it. It's in rough shape except for the body. The body has no dents and no rust of any kind, pretty much. But all the extras, the grille, glass, that type of stuff has been damaged, most likely by kids that have been partying in this barn. Recently, I noticed the barn is starting to become pretty dilapidated, and it's looking like it's going to cave in. In fact, the car is now tilting towards that gigantic hole in the floor. But everything's been broken on it as far as the opera window slats, tail lights, all the glass, that type of stuff has been damaged. But the body itself is really pristine. I'll bet you the paint probably would come out pretty nice too once it's cleaned up. This car is the 7.4, which I believe is the high output 400. It has pause traction. I looked underneath and saw the limited slip tag on the rear end. And it comes, or it originally came with the snowflake wheels. Two of them are missing, I noticed. It's on jacked up, and they shoved some wood under there and took a couple of the wheels, but the two wheels on the far side of the car that were harder to get to were still there. So it's an interesting project. I'm interested in doing something out of the 70s, and 74 would be a nice year to work on. I don't know too much about Pontiacs, like I said, but I think the Grand Am would be a fun car to drive. Does not have the snorkel hood, which is kind of disappointing. But the interior looked pretty good. Headliner was perfect. The seats were mostly good, with the exception of the driver's seat. The dash is all there but damaged. Somebody has pried on the dash a bit and broken part of the bezel. And but all the important parts are there. The steering wheel, the shifter, all the extras seem to still be intact. Cars up here in the Pacific Northwest do not really have much rust. Occasionally, if you let your car get covered in moss or tree leaves or pine needles, it can rust in the corners, but we don't have salt here, so there's really no rust to speak of on this car that I noticed. The motor seems to be all there. Looks like either the radiator or the fan shroud's missing, but everything's there. The carburetor and air conditioning, it all seems to be intact. And I guess the nose cones are hard to find. That front grille, from what I've read, is kind of hard to find, and this one's clearly damaged. But it's been sitting here since '94. It's last registered in '94, and I remember seeing it when I was driving around, 20 years ago. I remember seeing it in this barn, back when the barn was in much better shape. Anyway, there's a project that we may have to go out and talk to somebody about.